So I came up, the rotation came up again, and Father Gary's out of town, and I thought, oh my goodness, it may be something new I'll preach on, but guess what? It's the same thing I've preached on for the last 3 years. So I promise you I'm not going to bore you with what we said the last 2 years. We're going to take a different approach from it. Oh, we all know this story about the loaves and the fishes. It's a great story. We've known that since we were kids, went to Sunday school. It was fascinating to us that how Jesus could take such a small amount of food and feed thousands of people. But you see, Jesus, from a practical standpoint, knew exactly which was the best way to bring in a large crowd, and that was to feed them, and especially an all-you-can-eat feeding. I guess he was the first person that started one of these all-you-can-eat. But the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they all tell us of Jesus feeding the 5,000 plus women and children. However, Mark tells it a second story in his gospel with Jesus feeding only 4,000. So why is that? Well, a lot of theologians think that actually it's in there twice with Mark because he saw how important it was to tell that story more than once. And if you stop and think about it, yes, it is. Because the second version, and Mark tells us, he thought that it was the center of Jesus' being, who he was, and what he was here for. But all four tell it a little bit differently, but it's the only miracle that Jesus performed that's in all four Gospels. So that tells you how important that was. You see, these people have been following Jesus. They walked all the way around the end of the lake. They call it the sea, and they were worn out. Most of them had run out of food. But here they were. These people had come to see this man they had heard about, or they had heard him before, and they were curious. This man that could perform miracles. He could heal people. He could drive out demons. And they wanted to see for themselves because these people they needed that. Times were hard back then. And there was all kind of political turmoil, sounds like today, doesn't it? But anyway, so they needed someone to guide them. They needed someone to explain what life's all about because it was very harsh on all of them. So this rabbi, and most of these people were not Jewish. There were people from all walks of life and religions. But when they finally settled down, and they were worn out, they were hungry. And Jesus, being the compassionate person that he was, wanted them to be fed so that they knew that they could trust him, Jesus, to take care of them. See, Jesus kind of looked at this crowd of people, thousands of people. He looked at them somewhat as a crowd, like a group of lost sheep without a pasture, without a direction, as well as without protection from the ills and danger that society would bring. You see, a shepherd guards their flock, nurtures them, loves each and every one of them. See, the food satisfied their hunger, and the miracle of the loaves and fishes awed them. But even the disciples still, at this point in time, just really didn't get it. And I'm sure he was frustrated with them from time to time, but so after this is all over with, they're still shaking their heads thinking, what can he do? How can he do this? We had these cheap bread out here and these little bitty fish, and they were really just little bitty fish, like sardines. And everybody ate and was full. So when the people left and finally started wandering off, Jesus went up on the mountain to pray, as he did quite often because he just needed that time away from the people to converse with his dad. So the disciples got in their boats and started back across the sea, the big lake. But as they started out, a big storm came upon them. And their boats bounced around and wobbled in the water, and they were taking on water, and these guys were panicking. Now, this lake is only 4 miles wide, and Jesus is up on the mountain, and he can see this. And he says, these nitwits just really don't get it, but let me show them what I can do. So he just walks on right across the water and walks out to them, and when he gets there, everything goes as calm as you can see. And if that didn't get their attention, I don't know what they were. See, St. Augustine wrote that he came treading among the waves and so puts all the swelling tumults of life under his feet, meaning that Jesus can step out and solve everything if we let him. So why are Christians so afraid? It is a simple fact of life which has been proved by countless thousands and thousands of men and women in every generation, that when Christ is there, the storm becomes calm. The tumult becomes at peace. What cannot be done is done. The unbearable becomes bearable. And we pass the breaking point, and guess what? We do not break. Meaning that Jesus and our relationship with him, he can help us resolve all the hurts and things that we have to bear throughout this life. See, to walk with Christ will be for us also the conquest of the storms in each of our lives. We were discussing in Sunday school this morning, and lots of questions about some of the stuff that James, the brother of Jesus, was telling us in his letter. And someone brought up something, and in the reading in it was talking about everything being bearable and being able to deal with it. And I told them the story of a woman she was 88 years old when I met her. She was a spry little lady and cute as a button. And she started a 4-year course. Now she's 88, right? 4 years. Yeah. And while we were in that, something came up, and I said, well, we as Christians take the idea that God won't put anything on us that we can't handle. And this little lady, that sweet little lady, liked to chew me up one side and spit me out the other. She was from Chicago. She heard on the radio that there were children that couldn't be adopted. And she went and checked it out. She came back, took all of her life savings, bought a 2-story house next door to her. And she brought all these children home. There were like 20 of them. They were so handicapped that no one would take them. Now, she couldn't adopt. I think she only adopted 4 or 5 of them. The rest of them had to remain wards of state. But she took them. She nurtured them. She fed them. She loved them. And one of them passed away. And out of all of that, it's probably the best story I've ever heard. Like the story of the lost sheep. And how rejoiced they are. But she was devastated and never got over it. Even though she loved Christ and she knew she was wrong. But each of us, has to put our faith and our trust in Jesus to help us deal with all these issues that we run into. Someone else told me after that, well, I lost my wife. It was unbearable. I understand that. But Jesus is going to help us get through those things today. But leave here today knowing one thing, if nothing else, that Jesus is our shepherd. If we put aside our own desires and follow him, and he will lead us home, just as a shepherd would with a bunch of sheep. When things seem to be unbearable, more than we can cope with or comprehend, I guarantee you he will comfort us. And despite our fears, in the end, he will protect us until we go to meet him face to face. Amen.